How's it hanging, everybody? So today we're talking about the Wii U Gamepad Pro. That's right, the Wii U Gamepad. Revamped for the new generation. I'm just kidding. Of course, that's the Steam Deck. And I have a Steam Deck, as you can see. And the weird thing is, I don't think I've really talked about the Steam Deck much here on the channel, but I have been quite excited about it. It's just that the Analog Pocket really had my full attention there for a while, and the Steam Deck was kind of like, you know, a little bit of an, not exactly an afterthought, but you know, it was probably not getting the Steam Deck quite as soon as the Analog Pocket and all of that kind of stuff, so that's just sort of how it worked out. But I have had my Steam Deck for 2 weeks, and I want to give you my full impressions about it. But first of all, I want to tell you about the Steam Deck as a hybrid solution, something that you can dock very easily, play on your TV, and then undock and go, just like on the Switch, go from handheld to docked. And how easy is it? Is it worth your time in that respect? Because for me, that's really the bread and butter of the Steam Deck. It's not just that it's a portable PC, a handheld PC that plays Steam games. I mean, that's great, but for me, that's not really enough. Like, I need to be able to dock the Steam Deck or any handheld that I'm spending this much money on. Not that it's a very good value for the money, don't get me wrong, but it's a good value because it's a computer and does all kinds of cool stuff. And one of the things that it should do, of course, is dock to a TV without a lot of fuss. And the interesting thing is Valve's own messaging on this particular topic has been a little mixed. Like, they've come out and said that, listen, first and foremost, the Steam Deck is a hybrid, or excuse me, is a handheld platform. That's what it is. That's what it's good at. And it's like, okay, Valve, but you're also selling us a dock eventually, not yet, but there's a dock on the way. So with that in mind, you know, it is touted by you as a hybrid platform. That's what it is. So it should work that way. Now, of course, the official Steam Deck dock is not quite out, but I'm assuming when it's here, we will have some improved functionality going back and forth. But for now, we pretty much have to stick to the desktop mode of the Steam Deck, which isn't a big problem for me, but it is definitely not as fluid as something like the Nintendo Switch. I think that it's worth mentioning that the Nintendo Switch has some magic when it comes to the hybrid capability, when it comes to going docked, then pulling, you know, picking it up and going handheld, and just not missing a beat, just going back and forth so fluidly, so easily. It just works. And it's something that we really take for granted. I certainly do. And I realize how much I take it for granted after using the Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck is really a much different experience, and not in all good ways, but definitely, I mean, the power, the open platform of it all gives it its own brand of magic, but it's really a much different thing than the Nintendo Switch when it comes to the overall experience of using the thing. So I would like to talk about that today. I'll also give you my full impressions. I was on the first quarter of reservations for the Steam Deck, but I was also in the very last week of that first quarter. So I've had my Steam Deck for pretty much exactly 2 weeks now. So I've spent a lot of time mostly tinkering while also playing, you know, some games. And I'm giving you guys a little highlight reel here of some of the docked play that I've done. So here's what I can say. Like I said, you have to be in desktop mode for this to really work, because the Steam Deck at this moment as I'm recording this video, you can check the date. At this moment, the Steam Deck has a sort of bug that happens when you dock it to a 4K display, TV or monitor. It's going, no matter what cable you use, even if you use a cable that's not even capable of outputting 4K, it's still going to drag down and like it's not actually outputting at 4K, but it's just going really slow. And it has something to do with that connection and with the resolution of your display. I don't quite understand all the inner workings of that or why it's happening, but I can say that the way around it is just to go into desktop mode. So that's what I would do. Leave the Steam OS, or the gaming mode as it's called, aside when you're trying to dock it. And of course, you're going to need some sort of USB-C dongle that has HDMI out and a power pass-through and all that good stuff. There's a million of them out there. Just grab one off Amazon. Do your research. Make sure it's one that works well with the deck. But what I ended up using, I thought about trying to use my 8BitDo Pro controller here, which I love very much, and I use it mostly for PC stuff and Nintendo Switch stuff these days. But I ended up going with the PlayStation 4 DualShock because of the touchpad. The touchpad is a very nice navigational aid to have when you are in the docked mode, because you're going to have to do some desktop computer navigation. Now, a lot of people are just going to say, I don't want to do that. That's too much. And okay, that's fine. But for me, having this mouse pad here and just being able to navigate that way and make my way around a little easier is really nice. Another thing that's really cool is a lot of these Steam games, occasionally you'll have to use some sort of a mouse input, or maybe it's just easier to use a mouse input and you have to use a cursor on your screen, and sometimes it's just easier that way. So this kills two birds with one stone. This is very nice. Now, I also recommend, this is where it gets a little extra, okay? But I also recommend that you keep a wireless mouse and keyboard around. Now, again, a lot of people are going to say that's too much, but you don't have to keep it right in front of you. Just keep it within reach, because the thing is, when you're navigating a desktop, no matter what you're on, no matter what kind of a display you're on, a mouse and keyboard are going to come in handy, or even be essential sometimes. And you just want to make sure that they're within arm's reach, or they're on a table over there, or they're in a basket next to your couch, or however you want to do it. Just keep them close by, because you may have to grab those at some point and type something in, or do a keyboard shortcut or something. It's just, you're gonna have to do that. So keep them nearby. Of course they have these remote control, like TV remotes, that have a keyboard built in and a trackpad. And if you want to do that, that's fine. For my 2 cents, wireless mice and keyboards combos are dirt cheap on Amazon these days. I mean, you can get them for basically nothing. So I think it's worth the investment to pay, like $15, $20, whatever it is, to just get that and have it around and have it be reliable. I say do that. Also, the nice thing is you can actually wake the Steam Deck up with your mouse and keyboard, but you cannot wake it up with the Bluetooth controller for whatever reason. So that's something to keep in mind. Having a mouse and keyboard means that you can wirelessly wake up your Steam Deck while it's in docked mode, which is cool. I also want to talk a little bit about Steam Link, which you may be aware of. That is a technology that you can use. There is a little top box that Valve used to sell that it's called the Steam Link. It's a little box that you put next to your TV, and it basically allows you to cast your PC playing a game from the other room onto your TV. And it's fine, but I never really thought that, I always thought that it was a little bit just weird and clunky to navigate. Even clunkier than navigating a desktop OS, in my opinion. And then also there's the compressed video, and there's sometimes a little bit of input delay. It's just not, it's weird, because the whole streaming thing, whether it's from the cloud or whether it's from a device in your own house, and even if you have great internet connection or a great router in your home, sometimes it's still just the technology is just not quite there for me. So for me, I much prefer to have a mini PC of some kind, bingo, in front of or hooked up to my TV, and I can play that way. And the Steam Deck pretty much gets the job done, in my opinion. You might be noticing that the games that I'm showcasing here are not exactly big AAA Elden Ring level games, but that's the thing, is like, for me, I don't necessarily see myself playing a lot of AAA games on the Steam Deck because, well, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I've been playing Elden Ring and that works fine and great, and that's great. But I just don't see that happening consistently. I don't see us having a scenario with the Steam Deck where we're constantly playing every new big AAA games that comes out and working perfectly. I just don't see that as a reality. But I mean, of course, the more we can play, the better. But there's so many AA games that don't require an amazing computer, amazing GPU. There's, obviously ports of older games. Chrono Cross is one I'm about to talk about. There's indie games. There's retro games that you can play through RetroArch. The possibilities are endless on the Steam Deck. So really, new AAA games are only a tiny microcosm of what you can do with this thing. So for me, I'm probably going to be sticking to games that look a little more like Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Layer. The Impossible Layer? Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, that's what this game's called. It's a good one. Donkey Kong Country-esque 2D platformer situation. Very cool. But anyway, and it works. It looks great on the Steam Deck. This is outputting at 1080p. When you hook the Steam Deck up to your TV and you're in desktop mode, it's going to output at 1080p by default, I believe. And most games will default to that setting. This game did. Every now and then you'll find a game that wants to output at like 800p or 720p, and you might want to bump it up. But keep in mind that the Steam Deck itself has an 800p display on it. So there's a little bit of a difference between how it's going to output on the TV, and you might have to turn the performance down just a tad when you're on the TV. Now for me, that's no big deal. I don't care. I just want it to work. I want it to be reliable. My green screen is betraying me. It's not cool, man. All right, we're gonna roll with that. So anyway, docking the Steam Deck is interesting. It works. You got to be prepared to do some workarounds. And you're also going to have to see what games actually like the controller, because unfortunately a lot of games, including the big green checkmark Steam Deck verified games, don't work with a controller, and that means they don't work with a TV. Now some of them might work with a wired controller, but for me that's not entirely relevant. Like if a game doesn't work with a Bluetooth controller on the TV, it shouldn't be Steam Deck verified, in my opinion. A Steam Deck verified game, in my opinion, would mean that it works really well handheld and is also workable on the TV with a controller. And if those two things are happening, I'm cool with it being called Steam Deck verified. But I really don't think Valve has any business making these verified games if they don't work on the TV. That's just my 2 cents. The funny thing is, Chrono Cross is a new game, a new port of an old game that's just come out. I've had a heck of a time figuring out where I want to play Chrono Cross. Do I want to play it on the Switch? Is it gonna maybe slightly underperform on the Switch, or maybe not have the resolution that I might want, or whatever? So I decided to get it on Steam. I got it a little cheaper on Steam. So I got it on Steam, and of course I wanted to play it on the Steam Deck, and it's flat out uncompatible. Or is it? Because I'll link this in the description, but there is a fix to get Chrono Cross playing on the Steam Deck. Now, as I record this video, it's officially considered unsupported. But if you just basically use the latest experimental beta version of Proton, and you have to go into some specific settings to do that, you will find that Chrono Cross actually works a-okay. It launches. It works just fine, and not only does it work, but it uses the whole Steam Deck display, all of the the 800p 16 by 10 aspect ratio display it uses. What you find with some games is they'll actually cut off the top and bottom of the Steam Deck display so that you're only looking at a 16:9 ratio, which only cuts into a small amount of the screen, and it's really not a big deal. But I really appreciate the games where I can use the whole display. Chrono Cross is one of those, and it's considered incompatible. This is Chrono Cross also works with our DualSense controller, so DualShock 4 controller, which is really cool. Because, and it's just strange that Elden Ring, the game that is Steam Deck verified, only outputs at 16:9, so you're not using the whole handheld screen, and it doesn't work at all on a TV at this point, unless not without a lot of tinkering that I haven't done anyway. So for my 2 cents, it's just interesting the way the breakdown of these Steam Deck verified games are happening. But I mean, I'm happy that we have that green check mark because it's a very good guideline to work with, but I think that they should kind of prioritize doing that with ones that work with the TV. That's my opinion. Okay, what else do I want to talk about the Steam Deck? My final thoughts on the Steam Deck as a hybrid platform are, I really don't necessarily think that you should buy the Steam Deck right now if you want to have a wonderful time with the hybrid nature of the machine. If you like to tinker, and if you're patient, and if you're willing to spend some time figuring out what games you can play and what games you can't, then go for it. Knock yourself out, have fun. My whole thing is just don't get too caught up in trying to make something work if it's just taking a lot of your time. Like if some game that you just have to get working, or you want to get it working with a Bluetooth controller or something, and it's just not coming together, just focus on another game. I think most of us, I think it's a safe assumption that most of us who have a Steam Deck probably also have a PC that we can use and lean back on, and have cloud saves back and forth with Steam. That's awesome, by the way. And then you probably also have a somewhat sizable Steam library, and so that you probably have plenty of other games in your backlog that you can dip into, so focus on those. You know, that's my advice anyway. Just simple advice, not technical. But now this is the perfect time in the video, in my demonstration here, I'm getting into some RetroArch. And of course, now we're getting away from Steam. The main focus of the Steam Deck, of course, is Steam. And now we're getting into RetroArch, which is a collection of emulators, emulator cores that you can load up. RetroArch is not my favorite interface. It is not my favorite navigational experience. It is a labyrinth of menus and settings, and what does that do? Should I try that? And then you end up screwing something up, and you're like, oh crap, I can't remember what I did. How do I change back to defaults? And it's kind of a nightmarish endeavor trying to set up RetroArch, especially if you're really not used to it. Every time I've tried it in the past, I've just had kind of a bad experience with it, and I just have ended up abandoning it and going with some other, emulator that doesn't. It's not like a RetroArch that has all the emulator cores and you just load the cores you want. I'll just go with this old school emulator on my PC because it's easier to deal with. That's been my thing. But as you can see here, we have Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, a PlayStation Portable exclusive, a PSP exclusive, running on my TV, my 4K TV, looking like $1 million. And we'll see here in a moment exactly how amazing it looks, because when you get into gameplay, your resolution is, I think, quadrupled, and it looks amazing. It runs perfect, as does the PS1. PS1, there's all sorts of settings you can mess with, but for me, the PS1 is doing like an exact 4 times resolution, and it's a little smaller than the full screen, so you get some bars on the top and bottom, but that's okay. It still looks great, both on the Steam Deck display and on my TV through desktop mode here. And I've had a great time loading up like Saturn games that I never got to play back in the day. a game that I've wanted to play my whole life, and I just haven't had a Saturn, and emulation with the Saturn's always been kind of weird. But now, suddenly, I'm finding that Saturn emulation on the Steam Deck works wonders. And it's Legend of Oasis, the sequel to Beyond Oasis for the Sega Genesis. Legend of Oasis came out for the Sega Saturn, and it's here on my Steam Deck, and it runs great, and I am tickled pink about that game and so many other kind of lost in time games that are not commercially available today. I think Crisis Core is commercially available. You can pick it up on like the Vita or PS3 or whatever. And I actually do own it for my Vita, but I just think that it's going to be such a better experience playing it this way, because the Vita screen is just so small and my eyes do get quite tired when I'm looking at a small image like that. So for me, this is going to be the way to go. And with Sega Saturn, there's not many of those games you can pick up commercially at all these days. PlayStation 1, there's tons of games lost in time that we can't get to any other way. And man, this handles emulation so well. Of course it does things like GameCube as well, and not necessarily through RetroArch that it does that super well. You might want to go with another emulator. All of my tips that I got from RetroArch come largely from one video from Retro Game Core, and I'm going to mention that in the description as well. So I'll give you guys some links to basically my own references that I kind of used when I was setting everything up here. What else do I want to say about the Steam Deck? Well, for me, the Steam Deck is for me. It is absolutely my kind of thing, because I love tinkering. And with something like the Nintendo Switch, it is the anti-tinker device. You're not doing anything with the Nintendo Switch. It is very much a one-track machine, and it does that extremely well. But with the Steam Deck, it is wide open, and the sky's the limit. And I've done all kinds of weird stuff with the Steam Deck. I have Xbox Cloud Gaming working on the Steam Deck, and it runs really well. And it's for me, it's the definitive way to play, you know, those Game Pass games portably. I kind of wish I had the PC versions and I could have installed them maybe someday, but for now, the cloud's version works just fine. If I have some game I want to chip away at, and that's the way I can play it, that's cool. Next up, I did the Epic Game Store. Steam's own #1 competitor in the digital like PC game launcher market is Epic Games. And I'm running Epic Game Store launcher on my Steam Deck, and it's really kind of trippy because you're in Steam, the software, and then you load up the Epic Game Store launcher. So you're like launching a launcher with the launcher, and then you have basically the Windows software version of the Epic Game Store, and then you can install games just like it's a Windows machine and launch those games, and it generally works well. It's weird. It's very weird. I mean, I would say game for game, it's probably about as reliable for me. Your mileage may vary, but for me, I feel like the performance on Epic Game Store games was kind of on par with what I was seeing with Steam. Now we can see here, quick subject change. We're looking at Crisis Core. This is the actual gameplay. That is super crispy HD graphics. Zach is looking extra sassy as ever, in his military fatigues. And he's about to go beat up a weird dinosaur thing or something up the hill here. So yeah, Epic Game Store. I think people have complained that the Epic Game Store on the Steam Deck has problems with shaders or other performance issues, but with the games that I was playing, I can't really say that I saw that type of stuff. For me, it kind of just worked. The main downside is that it's just extra time navigating. So you have to launch the Epic Game Store. It takes a while to load. It's not as quick as you would see on a Windows machine. You have to wait for it to load. You have to then go in, launch the game, mouse and keyboard style. It could be better, but having it as an option is totally awesome because I have a mountain of unplayed Epic Game Store games that I have claimed that were free over the years, because if you know anything about Epic Game Store, they give away a lot of free games. And so I've bought just a couple of exclusive games off the Epic Game Store, usually for a really good discount. And then I have this mountain of free games that I've collected. So I have a large collection on Epic Games. And so now I have another cool way to play those games, or I have it's making me more interested in certain titles now that I have the option to play them handheld or on my TV. What else have I done with the Steam Deck? Of course, I mentioned RetroArch. That's really cool. I also had some of the best victories for me are the smaller victories, like changing the font in the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. That's something I thought could only be done in Windows, but nope, you can do the exact same thing in the game files on this flavor of Linux. So you basically go into your Steam game files, basically just look up the instructions on how to do that, and it's going to tell you how to do it in Windows, and you just do the exact same instructions on the Steam Deck, and it works, and it's awesome. Steam Deck desktop mode, not Steam OS. So you can totally do it, and then when you launch the game, even if it's in Steam OS, it has the fixed font, and it is glorious because that is such an important fix for the game. By the way, the font itself is not bad. It's too narrow. So you just need a wider version of the exact same font family and you're good. So that's what this fix does. It just makes the font wider, and which is definitely appreciated on a smaller screen like the Steam Deck. And then like with Chrono Cross, I got Chrono Cross working, even though it's claiming that it's supposed to be unsupported. Well, with a little tweaking, you can get it working. There's a lot of other things, like I'm pretty determined to get Elden Ring working with a Bluetooth controller. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I'm chipping away. And really, it's so much fun tinkering with the Steam Deck that I haven't spent as much time actually playing games. So that's probably what I should do. I should probably just use the Steam Deck for what it's for, which is, games. But it's so much fun to tinker for me personally. Hey guys, I'm on Twitter now, so you can hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Pestulon Gaming, spelled exactly like this channel, Pestulon, and then gaming is attached to that. Hit me up. You can actually message me on Twitter if anybody needs to message me, because YouTube doesn't really have open messaging like that. And thanks for hanging out with me. I'm sorry I haven't talked about the Steam Deck yet, but I'll probably be making more content about it because I can foresee the Steam Deck being in my arsenal, so to speak, for a long time to come. I think it's going to be relevant for hopefully many years. That's my hope, and I don't see why that wouldn't happen. So anyway, guys, thanks for checking me out.